we started thinking about that paper where 50% of the supplements on the market don't have in them what they say they have in them. We're like, this is gonna happen in this industry. Like, there's nothing special about this ball to make sure that that doesn't happen, that the same kind of people don't get into this industry. We have the lab, we're the oldest and longest manufacturers and distributors. We know how to deliver high quality products to research institutions around the world. We probably need to get into this industry just to keep it safe, just so that there's a safe version.
So, Chris, let's start by, you have the company VitalC, and I
Yep.
say it right? Okay,
MyVitalC, yep.
MyVitalC, okay. So talk about, I found this interesting, talk about what the main supplement is.
Yeah.
And then what it does, because I was reading up on it, but I'm sure there's a whole backstory and some interesting conversation to have on that.
Yeah, so the supplement is based on this molecule. So I know this is a podcast. I'm actually holding a model. If you're listening to the podcast, you don't have to find a screen. Just imagine a soccer ball where the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. So you have a spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms in the shape of a soccer ball. We call this ESS60. The molecule was actually discovered here in Houston. I know we're in Pearland, but we're basically in Houston, all right? Pearland is a suburb of Houston. And it was discovered here in Houston at Rice University. And the three scientists who discovered it, they published an article in 1985 and won the Nobel Prize for the discovery of this molecule in 1996. So a pretty fantastic discovery. The way I like to describe this molecule is it performs as well or better than the current best material in almost every application. So it makes better inks, better batteries, better tires, better photocells. And this is often where people get nervous. It's like, didn't you say you have a health supplement company? You said inks, batteries, tires, and photocells.
That's what I was thinking.
Right? It was like, this is, Chris, we need to work on your pitch because this is a bad direction. It actually gets worse first, right? So 20 of the shapes on the exterior of this are the same as benzene. So the same carbon, the same shape. And benzene, you may not know, is ubiquitous in our society and a necessary molecule for modern society. And if you just kind of want to imagine that, think about everything in this room or whatever room you're in, plastic, gone. Because the foundational molecule is this benzene ring, right? And so it's a six-sided ring of carbon. If you think about plastics gone, the next thing you can think about is it's used in a lot of medications, including aspirin, a lot of detergents. So we don't have modern society without the benzene ring, but when benzene is on its own, it's known to be toxic and known to be carcinogenic. There's 20 of them on the exterior of this ESS60 molecule. They assumed it would be toxic. They put it in a toxicity study. Instead of being toxic, the test subject that they gave it to, in this case it was Wistar rats, lived 90% longer than the control group.
Wow, so kind of like a longevity type thing.
Yes, exactly. Like literally the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, peer-reviewed published research, I know that's a lot, is because of this molecule dissolved in
And this might be a
olive oil.
dumb question, but this does not originate in the body. This is like in things, right? Correct?
Yeah, so it is a naturally occurring molecule, so you and everybody in the audience has been exposed to this.
Okay.
And the way I kind of describe that is if you take the soot from a candle flame, right? So you got a candle flame, you put a cold steel plate over the candle, over that flame, you'll get this deep dark soot. That has parts per million or parts per billion of this ESS60 molecule. So everybody's been exposed to it. But in order to make quantities sufficient to throw into a supplement, it was a good quote today on a podcast that I was on. One of my business partners, I think she used, we make it because nature doesn't make enough for you, right? And so we have to make it. And the way you make it is you vaporize 2 graphite rods in an inert environment at a slight vacuum. So that's a lot of stuff. The first and probably most dramatic piece is graphite is one of the hardest materials on the planet to vaporize. You actually need local temperatures of the sun to vaporize graphite, right?
Wow.
So we actually can watch this reaction occur in our reactor. If you don't have welder's goggles, you will burn out your retina. If you let that light shine on you, you will get a sunburn because, in fact, it is the temperature of the sun. It's giving off that same radiation.
Wow.
So this is an incredibly challenging molecule to manufacture. But it is naturally occurring. And then sometimes people start thinking about, hey, is there a difference between man-made and natural? And the reality is this is simply 60 carbon atoms in the shape of a soccer ball. There's only one way to put 60 carbon atoms together in the shape of a soccer ball. So honestly, you couldn't tell the difference between a man-made version and a natural version. They're literally the same molecule.
Where does this rank compared to other anti-aging type medications, like you got NAD plus or glutathione, or they were talking about rapamycin, which I think I saw Brian Johnson recently came out and said that actually did not help him. So like, I haven't actually heard of this before.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that, or like, how does it rank?
Well, so one, it blows everything else away in terms of this particular result, right? And we got to be scientific. You got to have scientific integrity. This was done on Wistar rats, right? So do I ultimately believe this is going to double lifespans? I don't think it's going to, but it had a profound impact on these Wistar rats. I like to kind of describe the next best way to live longer is calorie restriction. If you reduce your calorie consumption by 30%, you can extend your life by 30%. I like to call that the starve yourself 1/3 to death diet. You're in the industry. How many people sign up for the starve yourself one? They need marketing help
all the time.
Even if you give them a sweater, because they're going to be cold everywhere they go, they're not signing up. And that's only a 30% extension of life in that particular case. And what we're looking at in these Wistar rats is a 90% extension of life. Wow. Honestly, the reason you haven't heard about it, I think, really falls into two camps. One, I'm working hard to do a better job of like sharing this information with more people. I'm one of the leaders in the industry really bringing this to the general population. And two, there's no room for intellectual property. So the molecule can no longer be patented. Its uses can no longer be patented. So there's no value to, say, Big Pharma, who might come in with big budgets and then everybody would know about it tomorrow. That can't exist. And so it's left to this kind of grassroots campaign to bring it to awareness.
Are they doing any, human trials or clinical studies or anything like that to try to make it, like, I don't know, FDA approved or something? Is that the goal?
Yeah, so two things. One, it's a health supplement, right? It's a naturally occurring molecule, so it's a supplement. And the FDA doesn't actually approve supplements.
Oh, right, of course.
Right, so they'll approve medications, but they don't approve supplements. They have guidelines, and of course we're following those guidelines. In terms of human trials, I'm pretty excited about this. You're in the industry, so you may have that. One, let's kind of preface the whole supplement industry. I think it's generous to say that the supplement industry is challenged, right? like that's generous. And if you think about all the supplement companies that are in the space, how many of them are doing research? Like, it's a handful, right? And how many of them are publishing that research? Now you're just getting tinier and tinier.
Smaller. Yeah.
We're not that normal supplement company. We're actually continuing to do research. We published a paper last year in May. So not only are we doing the research, we're actually publishing that research. Kind of cool. We published with the lead researcher on the initial rat study. So his name is Dr. Fathi Musa out of the University of Paris. So we actually partnered with him, and so not only I didn't mention, we actually provided the material and we're mentioned in that original study, right? So when people are in the space saying, "Oh, it's us," no, it is actually us. It's our lab here in Houston. Wow. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And so we published with him in May. We actually have a paper. I think it may be out already. If it's not, it's about to be out. That's the second one. We've got the third research done. We just spent $150,000 on another batch of research. Wow. So we really do believe in putting our money where our mouth is. And then in terms of peer-reviewed and kind of clinical trials, there isn't anything underway, but I do have some exciting things to talk about. One, we did what I call an ad hoc study on sleep. And this was a crossover study. The reason we did it is pre-pandemic, I was in contact with Professor Benjamin Smar out of the University of California, San Diego. And he was a consultant for Oura Ring, right? So Oura Ring's one of the better sleep trackers on the market. Our most consistent testimonial is people take it in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night. So you're in the industry. I'll ask you, are you aware of anything that you can take in the morning to positively impact sleep at night?
Not that I know. I mean, there's stuff like you would take at night.
Yeah.
But not in the morning.
I had somebody like mention ashwagandha, and then subsequent to that, I have a podcast. I was interviewing an Ayurvedic expert, And she was like, hey, you take it in the morning for mental focus and energy during the day, and then again you take it at night. So it's a unique substance,
Right.
but you don't take it in the morning, positively impact sleep.
Yeah, no.
Because, we do know things like exercise. If you exercise in the morning, you'll have better sleep that night. And if you get exposure to the sun, you'll get your circadian rhythm in line with the rising and falling of the sun. And so you'll sleep better that night. But to take something, it's pretty profound. Because sleep is one of our most consistent testimonials, when I got on the phone with this Oura Ring consultant, I was like, what can we do? We got to do something. It turns out that the Oura Ring is pretty good at identifying COVID. And so in the middle of the pandemic, Benjamin Smart disappeared. Like he was, on press releases, like he was just gone. Like you can imagine, right? Like this thing can identify that thing that's terrifying the whole world. Like, let's talk to you about it. So, but we continued to carry that study forward. And it's a small study. It's 10 people. It's a small study. And it's a survey study and it's a crossover study. So the survey questions we asked were, how was your sleep? How fast did you fall asleep? How restless was your sleep? And how did you feel the next day? We collected 10 days of survey data before they ever tried the product, and then 10 days after they started the product, 10 days back off the product, and then 10 days back on the product. 100% of the participants reported improvements in sleep when they were on the product.
Wow.
And I've got another kind of thing. Well, let me jump into this because this is the next exciting thing that we're doing. So I was at, by the way, the summary, and we'll keep moving, is we are doing work. We are doing the research. We are moving towards clinical trials. We are that company that is not the typical supplement company, and we're very proud of that. The next thing we're doing, and this is driven off of, recently there was the Health Optimization Summit in Austin, Texas, and we had this Dr. Lane Young came up to us, and I had a conversation with him back at Dave Asprey's biohacking conference previously. He started giving our product to his clients, and he shared this with me. And by the way, he shared it with me at our booth. And then I was like, Dr. Young, I got to record this. So I actually recorded it so I can quote it pretty tightly. He was like, Chris, I don't care if you're male, female, pre-surgery, post-surgery, cardiovascular disease, otherwise healthy, your product takes elevated HSCRP numbers into normal ranges in 4 to 8 weeks. His particular example, and I'll talk about HSCRP here in a second, was he had a client who was sitting at 9. His protocols he wasn't able to move them. 4 to 8 weeks after starting our product, he was in 0.9. Now, HSCRP stands for high sensitivity C-reactive protein. It is an inflammatory marker, right? So it gives you an indication of your inflammatory status. You're in the industry, inflammation, like bad. You do, acute inflammation, good. You want inflammation after workouts, and then you want to recover from those, and then you want to make sure you don't have systemic inflammation. And HSCRP is an indicator of systemic inflammation. So that was really powerful. So we're in the process of doing an ad hoc HSCRP study. We're looking for people with elevated HSCRP numbers, get them with a follow-up test so that we can kind of prove this to us before we invest in a placebo-controlled double-blind study. And what reminded me to kind of tell that story is not only did he say it reduced HSCRP numbers into normal ranges, he said it also improved HRV, which is heart rate variability, and sleep by 20 to 60%. Right, so the data just keeps coming in that sleep is something that we improve consistently. And when I was first kind of tasked as the chief scientist of a supplement company to identify like what's going on here, the first place we actually hung our hat was on sleep. Yeah. If you can improve your sleep, right? I know when you're coaching people, like you're probably keeping track of like what's your sleep at. It's a pillar of health. Better sleep will improve your mental, physical, and emotional well-being. Of course. And so that's where we initially hung our hat, and that's continuing to be consistent.
So obviously we have the rat studies where they live longer. Would you say that in humans it's more so, not necessarily that they live longer, but it's more around sleep, or like is it both? Because it sounds a little bit like rapamycin, for example, at least from what Brian Johnson said, I don't know if there's enough research, but he's like, yeah, it actually was making me older.
Yeah.
But you don't feel anything. I've taken it. You don't feel anything.
Yeah.
So with this, does it also help you live longer, but you actually feel better? Because that's unique to me.
Here's what we think is going on. By the way, if these rats live 90% longer and they experience no other health benefits, that would be crazy.
Yeah, even that.
Doesn't make sense,
of course. Yeah, I just didn't know if it translates into humans or it's only the sleep.
Here's where we think it's much broader.
Okay,
and we actually believe it's at the mitochondrial level.
Wow.
So our current theory is the BOSS theory, which stands for buffering oxidative stress system. So we'll do a little bit of kind of general, superficial biology, and then I've got a fun analogy to kind of tie this all together. So the mitochondria is the powerhouse of every cell. There's between 50 and 5,000 mitochondria in every cell in your body, except for your blood cells, which have 0, and your brain and neurons, which actually have 2 million. It's kind of amazing how much energy our nervous system uses relative to our other systems. Like any energy source, there's a negative byproduct. You think about your car going down the road, there's exhaust. You think about a power plant, there's a smokestack, there's smoke coming out of it. In the case of mitochondria, you've got reactive oxygen species. The way I picture these is if they're not managed, they're like little bumper cars, or everything they smash into, they're rusting, they're causing oxidative stress, oxidative damage, and ultimately inflammaging, right? So this inflammation, that is the bad inflammation that we kind of tie together with aging, so inflammaging. Internal to the mitochondria, you've got 2 key antioxidants to manage those reactive oxygen species as they're kind of coming out of the car, coming out of the smokestack. And those are glutathione and melatonin. And I like to pause here for 1 second because melatonin's the sleep hormone, right? Our most consistent testimonial is sleep. So there's a lot of good parallels here. So what happens when, and they're there to manage the reactive oxygen species, but what happens when you stress a mitochondria? Like, well, first question is, how do you stress a mitochondria? I kind of joke, you stress a mitochondria by living in modern society. Like if you're alive, you have stressed mitochondria, but certainly a tough workout will stress your mitochondria. An airplane ride with the elevated electromagnetic radiation, smog, drinking, smoking, stressful emails, stressful conversations can stress your mitochondria. And now they're producing more reactive oxygen species than the resident glutathione and melatonin can manage. And that's where we think this ESS60 molecule steps in. So we know from peer-reviewed published research that this gets into the mitochondria. So we don't have any doubts about that. We also know from way back in the 90s when this was discovered that it can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles on the exterior of the cage. So here's what we think is going on. Stressed mitochondria, extra reactive oxygen species, instead of them running around like bumper cars and causing damage, they get attached to the exterior of this ESS60 molecule until the mitochondria can replenish the glutathione and melatonin and then manage them properly. And so my fun analogy, I really like this analogy. I think all biological analogies should start with Mardi Gras. I mean, a lot of biology happens at Mardi Gras, so. And it's the end of Mardi Gras and you're on Bourbon Street and you have these drunk reactive oxygen species running around smashing cars, smashing windows, causing oxidative stress, oxidative damage, and inflammaging. And you have the New Orleans Police Department, the glutathione and melatonin, coming onto Bourbon Street, handcuffing themselves to these reactive oxygen species and getting them off of Bourbon Street. But what does the New Orleans Police Department do when they're overwhelmed? They take those reactive oxygen species and they stick them in a paddy wagon. They attach them to the exterior of this ESS60 molecule so they can't do any damage. And then when the New Orleans Police Department replenishes the glutathione, replenishes the melatonin, then they can handcuff themselves to those reactive oxygen species and get them off of Bourbon Street. And so that's why we say that this ESS60 molecule is the boss, buffering oxidative stress system. And one maybe good summary is we believe we're reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria. And if you're reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria, you should have head-to-toe testimonials. And in fact, we have head-to-toe, like crazy head-to-toe testimonials.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I'm assuming you ingest it, or is it something you inject it as well, or no?
No, you ingest it. Do you want to do a shot?
Sure.
All right, we got it. This is.
I wonder how. I'm actually curious how this tastes.
This is 5 minutes. So let me explain what this is. A high-quality extra virgin olive oil.
Okay.
You know, twist it like twice and then.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And with as much of this ESS60 molecule as you can get dissolved in it. So this is going to taste like a high quality extra virgin olive oil. What that means is it will leave a peppery flavor at the back of your throat.
Okay.
That is a sign of a high quality extra virgin olive oil. So cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Here we go.
Now this is what's interesting because you'll feel that pepperiness. And
there it is.
It might impact your voice, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, a sip of water, it's gone. But one of the ways you know that this is a high quality extra virgin olive oil is that pepperiness. You may have been at a chain Italian restaurant and they pour oil on a plate for you to dip your, and then they crack pepper in it. The reason they're cracking pepper is they're trying to get a more expensive flavor from a less expensive
Interesting,
oil.
Yeah.
So that's
that has a pretty decent kick. Like that is even more than I expected.
You think about Dr. Stephen Gundry.
Yeah.
He's been promoting olive oil for a long time. Brian Johnson, you mentioned him already. Like he's a big olive oil.
Is that just your kind of vehicle of choice of what you put it in? Like it could be anything, right?
It could be any oil.
Okay,
it
any oil.
turns out that this molecule is not water soluble. So
Interesting,
if you had a pile of it, it would be like a black crystalline powder. No surprise, it's carbon. Kind of like sugar crystals or salt crystals. And if it's ESS60, you could consume it safely. And because it's not water soluble, you would just excrete most of it.
Gotcha, yeah.
When you dissolve it in olive oil, you get all of the individual molecules floating around all by themselves. And now it's basically infinitely more bioavailable. And this is just a kind of fascinating fact about how small, right? Because it's a big model that I'm holding, right? Almost soccer ball shaped model. This molecule, that product that you just took, one drop of it has more than 400 times as many of these molecules as you have cells in your body.
Wow.
In one drop. That's how small it is.
I'm for anyone listening, I was surprised. Like, I mean, it's not like overwhelming, but it's like it does have
a kick. You're like, oh, Chris, maybe Chris could have warned me a little bit more.
I mean, it wasn't that bad, but it definitely has a kick. So, Chris, like, what motivated you to transition from being a university student to launching a longevity supplement and built it around this specifically? I mean, that's got to have a pretty cool story to it.
Yeah, so, and it's in my book, right? So I have a book called Live Longer and Better, talks about the discovery of the molecule, its transition ultimately into health space, and how my business partner, Robert, and I started the business. Honestly, we never thought we were going to be in the supplement space. Again, manufacturing it, I kind of joke, we're happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial manufacturers. We're manufacturing it, and so, if there is such a thing, Robert and I are definitely it. And we're manufacturing it and selling it to research institutions around the world, so they can put it into inks, batteries, tires, and photocells. In fact, this is kind of an interesting.
Is that literally how you started?
Yeah.
Wow, that is so interesting.
Back in 1991. So we were actually manufacturing this molecule 5 years before they won the Nobel Prize for discovering the molecule.
That is so interesting.
So if there's, I know this is a business-related podcast.
Like the transition is just so interesting to me.
You'll love this, especially being in the health space. But one message that I might give, and I know a lot of business kind of experts will share this, like be careful about quitting because you're often so close to something so much bigger than you realize, right? Like it's that effort and you're plugging away and maybe you get distracted by something else, or maybe you're just like, this isn't working. Like, be careful, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs get to the point where they're probably just about to cross the finish line and they don't even know it. Yeah. And then they stop and what could have been doesn't happen. In this case, we were in the right place. We're carbon nanomaterial scientists. It's funny. This study comes out in mid-2012. These rats live 90% longer. About mid-2013, we start getting phone calls from this crazy, wacky group of people called biohackers. And I can say that now because I am a biohacker, right? Yeah. And they're like, hey, Chris, we saw these rats live 90% longer. How much should I be taking? And my business partner, what we heard was, hey, that's stuff that you sell to research institutions around the world to put into inks, batteries, tires, and photocells. How much of that stuff should I be consuming? And my business partner and I are like, I think you should consume zero. Yeah. Like, we added not for human consumption to our labeling in I think about that. From 1991 all the way to mid-2013, we don't have to have not for human consumption on our labeling. Yeah. We finally added in mid-2013. let me be clear. The literature was clear. Right. This is safe. You process it properly, this is safe. But we're conservative carbon nanomaterial scientists, inks, batteries, tires, photocells, that still resonates. Right. And so we put not for human consumption on our labeling. And that kind of manifested in this bizarre situation where we were getting 2 to 3 phone calls per week. And those phone calls sounded like, hey, Chris, I just wanted to share with you, my knee pain is gone. And we're like, you mean the knee pain of your rat, right? Because it literally says not for human consumption on the labeling, and you'll appreciate this piece. Yeah. Hey, if my rat weighs 275 pounds and does HIIT training on Tuesdays and Thursdays, should my rat take an extra serving on Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? So we kind of know what's going on. We don't put a stop to it because the literature was clear that it was safe, but we were still very uncomfortable. In fact, my business partner Robert and I got together every quarter. And do we want to get into the supplement space? And the difference between delivering commercial quantities of carbon nanomaterials to research institutions and supplements is just monumentally different.
I can imagine.
And so we decided every time, all the way up until the latter part of 2017. In fact, between 2013 and 2017, I found a research paper that said 50% of the supplements they had purchased on the market did not have in them what they said they had in them.
Oh yeah,
right. Yeah, you have no. They're just like, Chris, no, yeah, that makes sense. So we just didn't want to get into this industry. Finally, at the latter part of 2017, a guy with a big YouTube following started talking about all the benefits he was getting taking it on a daily basis, and our phone went from ringing 2 to 3 times a week to 10 times a day.
Wow.
So in that quarterly meeting with my business partner, Robert, we're like, okay, this is a little bit bigger than we
Is this
thought.
just people who know you sell this basically and they want to get a hold of it?
They want to get a hold of it. We're the largest and oldest manufacturer and distributor of the molecule on the planet. Like that's where they land. And so this is bigger opportunity than we realized. And the next piece is we started thinking about that paper where 50% of the supplements on the market don't have in them what they say they have in them. We're like, this is going to happen in this industry. Like there's nothing special about this ball to make sure that doesn't happen, that the same kind of people don't get into this industry. We have the lab. We're the oldest and longest manufacturers and distributors. We know how to deliver high quality products to research institutions around the world. We probably need to get into this industry just to keep it safe, just so that there's a safe version. And it happened a lot faster than we realized, but we tested 22 of the products kind of in the what I would call industrial C60 space, and all of them except for one, and of course ours, were woefully low in concentration. They matched that paper of that is typical in the industry. And that's really when we came to market. We asked ourselves 2 final questions. The first is a moral question: are we comfortable selling it? So I take it, my wife takes it, everybody on our team takes it. By the way, it's not, you don't have to take it to work at our office. Like they just welcome. They just have access to the research and honestly the testimonials from customers, and so they all take it. And then the next is from the legal perspective, you got the FDA and the FTC. You got to cross the T's, dot the I's, and we're doing that. And so we really started bringing this to market in 2018.
So you've been in this same business. I know it's changed a little bit, but since 1991, like 30-something years. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I find that super fascinating and impressive, because most entrepreneurs, they're bouncing left and right every couple of years. I mean, that's pretty spectacular. So talk about like how you even stayed focused for that long. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, some of it was how slow the business was, and I'll admit I did start another business in the middle of this, right? I had entrepreneurial aspirations, and at some point when this was just selling into research institutions around the world, I did start a marketing company, and so I do fall prey to what you just described, but my business partner and I really, this isn't like, the story's amazing. Like, just to wake up and continue to work with this molecule is amazing. And even if it wasn't going to meet the entrepreneurial aspirations, we were never going to close it down. And then the fact that it ended up shifting, right, and getting into the health space, and that has dramatically changed the course of the business, and being able to, just be flexible about where, I talk about in the book our initial business plan, which I believe you should do a business plan. You just need to be prepared for what I'm about to describe to happen to your business plan, which is our business plan was based on us selling this particular product to the University of Houston on a cadence once a month. That was our whole business plan. Like from day one, we're like, we can probably sell somewhere else. But the reality is this will work. They still haven't bought from us 34 years later.
Wow.
Right. So you gotta put the business plan together to convince yourself that it's worth like pursuing. And if you want funding, which we never took, if you want, support and business partners or whatever outside of the current thing, you got to have this business plan. But you also need to know you can't make the business plan the way it's going to end up. There's just too many variables, and you've got to be able to shift and work on the fly and go like, wow, we're doing a hard right on this one because we didn't even want to be in the supplement industry, and now we're in the supplement, like squarely in the supplement industry.
Did you ever any thoughts of stopping this and starting something else? Because I even so, like your shifts, it's just still crazy to me to see you stick on one thing for that long because most people can't do it.
Honestly, I owe a lot to Robert, my business partner, Robert, because he sat in the space of making good money. I wouldn't say, when you become an entrepreneur, you have I think bigger aspirations than the money that was coming in. And that's why I started another business to kind of pursue those aspirations. So that is the piece. He's the piece that keeps this going. And then as soon as we see what the opportunity is, right, and have that quarterly meeting that says, we probably need to get into this space, then that's where I shift and pulled back from the digital marketing agency and started focusing entirely on MyVitalC.
What's the main way you guys sell this? It almost seems like I don't know if you're selling it mostly to stores or consumers. Like, how are people buying this from you?
Our best marketing strategy, thank you very much, is for me to get on a podcast.
Wow.
And if that particular podcast has an audience and if they have an influence over that audience, then we do well. And you're in the space, so most podcasts don't have much audience, and most podcasts have. I kind of joke this about influencers because we worked with lots of influencers. The reality about influencers is most of them don't have much audience and have even less influence, right? So in that space, there's been value for us in user-generated content to utilize influencers to create this content. But it hasn't really, at this point, translated into sales or a viable marketing strategy yet.
Yeah, so you've done, from what I've read, correct me if I'm wrong, but 100-something, let's say, podcasts. Like, does that sound about right?
Yeah, 120 some odd podcasts.
So this is kind of how you sell it. Like, what's kind of been the key factors that makes it successful? Like, I guess if it's the podcast, what specifically? Is it the audience size, or like what are you looking for specifically usually?
So I can tell you, I'm very data driven, right? So every podcast I go on will have a unique URL. There's a coupon code on that URL. I'm looking at that data, and if somebody kind of causes a little spike, I'm like, hey, let us sponsor your podcast, or what might that look like? I can tell you this will be no surprise. I was on Dr. Gundry's podcast before the pandemic. That moved the needle. That was probably from where we were at the time, kind of pretty early on. That was probably a 30x month.
Let's say at the end of the podcast you say, hey, you can find me here. Is that how it's getting to you? Wow.
Yeah, so we give the link for your particular podcast, and then people go there and they get the coupon code and they purchase.
Wow, that is so interesting. And I if you can pull off that type of marketing, I personally like it a little better because there's less variables, it almost feels like. Because I run a lot of Facebook ads, Instagram ads, YouTube ads, etc. It's up and down, right? It's up and down. And so at least
it's funny because I'm on the other side going, how many podcasts can I do? Because I'm going to bump into it, right? I'll be honest, part of the reason I wrote this book, in my head, one, I fundamentally believe in writing books. I believe in when you gather information, two things happen when you write it or even teach it on a podcast, which is, one, you cement the knowledge in your head by writing it or like presenting it, right? So when you teach, you actually learn. And then just the concept of, if I'm going to bother to learn this, like everything I'm learning from somewhere else, right? But I say it a different way, and I'm going to resonate with a certain audience, and I believe in giving back to that audience, right? So, hey, collect this information. And when I got out of Gundry's podcast, a 30x month, you're like, you're an entrepreneur. You're like, how do we do that again, right? And in my head, I was like, I don't know if writing a book will get me back on Dr. Gundry's podcast, but I know that not writing a book will make sure that I don't get back on it. So it was, and I've told him, actually, I'm still friends with Dr. Gundry. And hopefully we'll do a product sometime at the end of this year, which would be amazing. But I told him he was the reason, he is a person who inspired me to write the book. And so that's really important. But I am on this outside where how many podcasts can I get on?
Yeah.
How many big podcasts are there? And then, you know what? I feel like we'll actually have more control over our destiny. It's funny when the grass is greener on the other side, right?
Yeah.
When we can spend $1 and make $2. Right?
Yeah. Well, look, going to that, what do you sell this for?
It's about $100 a month.
$100 a month. Yeah. So just from my experience in marketing, the one reason I like the podcast for this model is just, it's kind of low priced, right? Yep. It's like more B2C. So if I'm selling a $10,000 or $15,000 offer, I can spend a lot on ads. I can spend $4,000 to make 15. Yep. So that's probably one of the things you're running into is just when you're spending money because your margin is so low, the podcast makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Have you, just curious, like, have you thought about, like Dr. Gundry brought up, have you thought about kind of becoming partners in the sense of like, hey, we'll pay you this much per month to keep having us on the show? Or like, have you thought of that?
So I have multiple brands, and there is one brand that is kind of doing that on a regular basis, and that's effective. Some interesting stats, because we keep going back on these shows, the lifetime value of those customers is double.
Wow.
Right? So you think about, hey, is it good to get, like if I could get on Gundry's show once a month, that's never going to happen. But if I could, right, and it's for a couple, this is a fascinating piece of data. I was having a conversation with his team. When he has a guest on his show now, and I don't know if this was true back when I was on it, but when he has a guest, most of his shows are just him. When he has a guest, his views drop dramatically because they're there for him.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy, yeah. Right?
Whereas we're relative to Gundry, super small. I'm looking to like, hey, can I leverage his audience? Can I leverage their audience? They're trying to leverage my audience as well. They're there for him. So that's a pretty fascinating statistic. So there is value in going back on it. Like, we can have all sorts of interesting business conversations. What is the value of sending a newsletter once a week or twice a week, or when you get the list big enough 3 times a day? Like you and I both know somebody who's popping lists 3 times a day. And there's some part where you look at it and you're like, I'm pretty sure there's value and I'm not going to stop it. But how do you really track the value of these emails that are going out on a regular basis, right? And so again, I'm data driven. I like to look at, hey, if I look at these newsletters, what is a customer who hasn't been a customer for 90 days that has received an email and is reactivated? I think that has value. But if you look at the data that I just gave you, which is double lifetime value because we're back on these shows, right? Like, again, if I could be back on Gundry's show, like that would just continue. You keep people on subscription. That's one of our business models, or just reordering because they see you over and over again. And there is only one way to test that. And it's extremely painful, and that is to stop the newsletters, which you will never do, right? Right. So, but I guess you could get a lot more sophisticated. Our list isn't big enough, but you could actually stop to part of the list, right? And then you would know, hey, when I didn't hit this list twice a week for 3 months, their LT, like it's still tough data.
Because some of the emails you're sending, I'm just assuming is just value. There's like no links, there's nothing to buy. It's just like you're giving value that, okay. That's
links to podcasts that I've been on. I do have a podcast called Live Beyond the Norms. So links to that,
right.
And just, value that we give. My Instagram account is a lot about I'm listening to Alex Hormozi. How do I keep delivering value?
Yeah.
Right. I don't need anything. And then there's interesting. An advantage I have, I think, in like the social media space, the story's actually really interesting. It's just not me thinking, everyone wants to hear about my stuff.
Yeah.
No, the story is actually amazing.
Yeah, I hadn't even heard about this molecule before, which I'm a little bit surprised because I kind of geek out on those types of things. So it's been very interesting for me.
Well, and I can tell you, we do sell the antidote for what you just took.
That thing I think might help me live longer with that peppery taste. There's a high chance. So I saw you did a podcast with, I think I'm going to say her name wrong, but Andrea Donsky.
Yeah.
And in the interview, there were over, I guess it covers 55 longevity experts or so, give or take. What was like a striking mindset or lifestyle thing that you noticed across that research?
So I did a longevity summit. I'm actually about to relaunch that longevity summit in August, and that's a lot of work. Like
Oh yeah,
these
I can
launches
imagine.
are. And I interviewed 55 experts in longevity, including Ben Greenfield, who you probably know, probably your audience knows,
Yeah,
but
I
a
know
lot of
him.
people wouldn't. That was a fascinating interview. And Dr. Stephen Gundry, Dave Asprey, a guy, Tom O'Brien, and Sergey Young. He hangs out with Tony Robbins and Peter Diamandis. And so I got like literal experts in longevity. And the thing that I went into this, so 55 experts, I went in looking for what I call 2 silver bullets. The first one was like the silver bullet that is the pill that you would take and live forever.
Right.
But I didn't find that, so you won't be surprised that doesn't exist yet. And then the other one was the silver bullet that will kill you. And I think this is pretty fascinating. I had a couple of interviews with stem cell experts. And that's where I think our real weakness is. Because stem cells are the cells that actually replenish, right? You think about your muscles are replenished every 3 months, right? Every cell in each of your muscles is replenished every 3 months. Where does that come from? It comes from stem cells, right? Stem cells are pluripotent stem cells are floating around and we're like, this guy needs to be replaced. And so we swap them out and now we have another muscle cell. And that's happening every 3 months. That is the repair mechanism. It comes from red bone marrow, right? And red bone marrow shrinks with age. Now, if you end up without a repair mechanism, let's pretend you got free gasoline in your car forever, but you couldn't repair it. It will stop at some point. So that is an actual death sentence. And so I think that's one of the things, really powerful things that we need to solve in terms of thinking of longevity, living a lot longer, potentially living forever. I think there is a solution. Here in the United States, you're not allowed to inject exogenously grown stem cells. So you can take stem cells out of your body, you can grow them. Other countries, you can inject them. Here in the United States, you can't yet. I believe that'll change. So you could end up with some sort of dialysis kind of process where you're continuing to get stem cells, your own stem cells injected. The reality is I think we'll probably be growing red bone marrow in labs, and then you'll be able to inject that. Like you kind of raise your eyebrows, like, you think we're really going to be able to do that? I think this data point points to unbelievable changes. So in 1950, medical information doubled every 50 years, 50 years. When I started kind of talking about this, which was probably 9 months ago, maybe even a year ago now, medical information was doubling every 3 months. Wow. So what that means is, let's pretend it's the beginning of 2025. We're halfway through, but the beginning of 2025, well, we can just say this. Already, we have 4 times. So we're in the middle of 2025. We have 4 times as much medical information than we had when we started 2025. Wow. So all of that information, there's 4 times more, and that's going to double in 3 months and double again. So by the end of the year, we're going to have 16 times more medical information than we did when we started 2025. Wow. Like it's so whatever is possible is going to happen a lot faster than
you brought up stem cells. I thought that's interesting. I've done them in Costa Rica and I did them in Mexico. And my mindset, I'm curious what you think. I've kind of thought, okay, some of the stuff is still like, some people say it works, some don't. It's not 100% proven, but I look at it as if it even gives me a 1% benefit with the extra money I make in my business, I kind of feel like it's a good investment. What's your thought on that?
I think it's a good investment.
Okay.
I haven't actually done it yet. I've done some peptide, like in terms of being a real biohacker. I've injected peptides. I think that might be the finish line that gets you into a real biohacker. But yeah, I think stem cells are really valuable. And I think, again, even think about 16 times more, the understanding of the value of stem cells and how to use them. If there's, maybe they need to be treated a slightly different way before they go in, red light therapy or whatever. That information is going to continue to grow. Yeah. And so it sounds like you didn't really notice much.
I had it injected into the blood, which is kind of the normal one. They also did some on like my scalp and so forth, which I had 2 experiences. One, they kind of put me to sleep kind of mildly and kind of drilled, it almost like they drilled it in there. It was like pretty deep.
Well, wow.
And then the other one was just kind of surface level, like with what would you call it, like a dermapen?
Yep.
I was like, I don't know if that's enough, but yeah, I didn't feel I didn't feel, different really. In my head, I'm like, maybe, I feel a little better today, or like maybe my skin looks brighter. But I think it's one of those medications, or one of the things at least I took. It was like rapamycin. Like I took it and I was like, I hope it works, but I don't really feel anything. Yeah. That was my experience. But
so I don't know if you've heard Tony Robbins in his book Life Force. He talks about like he had a shoulder problem,
right?
And then he had a severe reaction, and they kind of knew that he was going to have this as his body kind of replenishing cells, and was like just wrecked for a couple of days or something, and came out and I can lift my arm, which is so you were hoping for something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have an orthopedic thing I was doing it on, so I've thought about that, like maybe if I injected on my shoulder or my joint or something, but I was just like, maybe it helps me like stay younger or fights infections or whatever. I mean, I think I'm a little bit like aggressive because I just look at it as like a lot of guys are out there buying a bunch of cars and stupid stuff. And I'm like, yeah, like if it's an extra $1,000 a month or $2,000 here, $8,000 here, like it's whatever for me.
So invest in that. And it's I think we're pretty damn confident it's not harmful.
Yeah.
Right. And we're
like,
also,
what would you say the benefits are if it's just into the bloodstream though? Because I've seen a lot of research on like you have a surgery on your shoulder or something like that, but do you see anything promising in terms of just injections into the blood?
Well, I think it's a good idea. I think maybe in this particular situation, you just didn't have any, like in a sense, like personifying the stem cells. They're wandering around going, what needs to be replaced here?
Yeah.
Right? Like what's damaged, what's damaged goods, and where can I be of value? And if they're running around in you and like, that's okay, like then it probably isn't going to have as much value at that time.
Yeah.
But it is probably something to do, on a yearly basis. I know there's a guy, I don't know if you know him, he's a bodybuilder, Chris Gethin.
Yeah, of course.
He's a buddy of mine, actually, and I got to do a wellness retreat with him, and I know he had a totally, I think there's a picture with this all black and blue, blew out his shoulder.
Yeah.
And
so nice.
And he did stem cells, I think it was Panama, and then maybe Costa Rica, he's done it in a couple places. Yeah. Maybe it was Mexico, but he raves about it, and I'm certain that's on his protocol for.
I'm curious if I tried it on, because I've had a lot of surgeries, like orthopedic surgeries, and so I've always been curious if I tried it, maybe after one of those surgeries, maybe I'd be saying something similar. But yeah, I mean, I find it interesting because I just look at stuff, I'm like, maybe it gives me a benefit. If it's even a small chance, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So it's a little more aggressive. What's one piece of advice you would offer founders looking to build like a supplement or a health tech company similar to yours? I'm sure you have a lot.
Well, I mean, the first one is I'll give this story. So we have great ideas all the time, right? People on our team, hey, we should do this. Maybe we should. This is a great idea. Understand that if you don't have a way to sell it, it's kind of not a good idea. Like as great of an idea as it is, if you don't have a sales process, the reality is every new idea is another business, right? And you've probably had this. If I just had another me to like run that, and then another me to run that, and then another me to run that, then imagine how all of the me's, and then all of the me's would probably be equally satisfied with where you're at because they're all out there earning their thing, and the real value is focus on you. Like maybe that's the great lesson in even that example is focus on yourself, right? Focus on getting your mindset right, improving yourself. Alex Ramosi, you're like invest in the 23andMe or S&Me or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That when you invest in yourself. In terms of supplement companies, I think getting on podcasts is a great strategy, and then you've got to be honing other strategies that you can leverage to grow your business.
What are maybe some morning or evening habits that you have that you think have shaped you to be successful? And maybe there's nothing in particular, but is there certain things you do on a daily basis that you think have really made you successful?
I really like to work. I don't work that hard. I'm not cranking out 17-hour days. When we go to conferences, I crank out 17-hour days and I love it. And I kind of, thrive in that environment, but then I crash after, right? Like I need a day off or whatever. Listening to your body, I think, is really important. I tend to, it's funny, Jeff Bezos talks about his mornings are pretty casual and he doesn't have his first meeting until 10. I would like to say that I'm following him, but I also haven't achieve the level of success that he has. And I'm pretty sure we would understand he didn't do that for 25 years, right? This is something that change that he's made. And it's interesting how kind of successful entrepreneurs will say, hey, pursue your passion. No, pursue where the money is and then figure out how to make that your passion. Like that is the reality, I think, for a lot of people. So I don't think there's any one thing. I've always been extremely curious and really hard working. This is actually an interesting kind of AI story. The CEO of my digital marketing agency just flagged an article on AI, and they were looking at data, and people who use AI actually get dumber. And I don't think that's really going to surprise you, right?
It doesn't, because like every time you have a question, you just ask it, and so you're not thinking. And I've actually said that before. It makes sense.
Yeah. And so I've spent my whole career. And a lot of it was really kind of in the tech space associated with the digital marketing agency, where if there was a shortcut that I could do, I almost wouldn't do it if there's a way that I could learn to do it better, more accurately, and quicker in the long time. So, hey, I could do it the hard way and get it done in an hour, or I can take 2 hours and get it done in a way so that the next time it's only going to take 15 minutes. Like, think about optimizing your time. I think that's something that I'm pretty good at. Like, how am I going to optimize my time? And sometimes that means it sucks today and it's going to take twice as long today. But as you go down the road, and that goes back to actually investing in me, right? I'm investing in the skill set so that I can do a faster, better job in the future. And I think with AI, man, we got to be careful. Like, I had an example this week. Like, I was like, I am getting dumber.
I think it's good. I like using AI if I'm trying to come up with more ideas. So it's like, hey, here's kind of what I'm thinking. And it gives me some stuff like, oh, that's interesting. So it's like a little mini coach where I can bounce ideas off of. But I think if you're just counting on it to do everything for you, that's probably a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Like you said, I just think it makes you dumber because you're not using any critical thinking anymore. So we'll see where that heads. One of the things you said about starting your business, you said to get more than one Lamborghini. What's the story around that?
Yeah. So, and this is in the book. Why did I become an entrepreneur? I'm in the health space. I wish it was, well, I don't wish it was like, the pain to passion. That's often what's going on in the health space. Somebody has their own kind of physical challenge or the challenge of a loved one, and then they solve it, and now they're out to save the world. And that's not how I ended up here. In terms of entrepreneurship in general, when I was 14 years old, I had a picture of a Lamborghini. I can still see it, like on the wall, Lamborghini, red doors open. I can smell the leather, and I wanted a Lamborghini. Yeah. And I found this article that said, if you want one Lamborghini, you should become a neurosurgeon. If you want more than one, you should become an entrepreneur. And I'm a 14-year-old kid. What 14-year-old kid is? I'm sure there's some somewhere, but it wasn't me. I was like, oh, I can have two. It sounds so simple. Just become an entrepreneur. Now, I don't have my Lamborghini yet. I'm well on my way, but I don't have one yet. Man, I love that. And the car's changed. I wouldn't get
of course. Yeah, not the same one that you wanted at that point. You've obviously interviewed a lot of executives, researchers, biohackers, what have you. What's the best piece of advice you maybe have received from a guest?
If I think about from a guest, I don't know that there's any one. A lot of that's going to be really more health focused. I tend not to kind of get into business focused. Mm-hmm. I can tell you the people who seem to be, at least the ones that I respect, right, wherever that sits, are the ones who stick with something the longest, right? Yeah. So you think about a Christian Drapeau who owns StemRegen, which is a stem cell releasing product. So it releases stem cells from your bone and marrow, which then you can heal faster, ostensibly. His story is kind of like mine. It's a long story where he's been involved in plugging away in this area. And you might look at his success, this is so true, right? You look at the success, it's like, that dude's a success overnight. No, he's been plugging away at it for years or decades. Right. And I think this isn't from somebody, but this is what I would share, is the concept that success is incredibly boring. And the way that I kind of create an analogy for that is you think about Michael Phelps, like the most decorated Olympic athlete ever. And he swam the same, 1,500 meters, I don't even know what the distance is, every day, like for not weeks, not months. He ate the same 15,000 calories a day because he was burning so many, not for weeks, not for months, not for years, but for decades. And if you just grab a random person and you're like, Tanner, I want you to eat the same 15,000 calories starting tomorrow and swim the same laps, you're like, that's boring. I'm not going to do that, right? Like, and so you've got to, one, figure out what the path that you're on that you're going to stick with, and then also figure out how to wire your brain to enjoy boring stuff. Because it is so true that entrepreneurs and actors or whatever, people who reach any sort of pinnacle, people are like, oh, they're overnight success. And that is never true. Like, it is never true. They have plugged away, right? I've had this conversation 1,000 times, and I love it. And I'm going to have this conversation 1,000 more times because it is something that, one, I know it's delivering value, and two, it is the thing that what is it? It's a 20-mile march, right? It's the 20-mile march that I need to do in order to grow the business.
Yeah, being consistent. Chris, what's a question I should have asked you that I didn't that might help people? And I know it's a little bit of a tougher question, so you can't think of anything, but I always like to end with that.
What question should you have? How about you're in a cutting-edge beta product. Do you ever have doubts about the product and its efficacy? And the answer is yeah, I do, right? I could say they're a lot less than they used to be. But when we first brought this product to market, remember we tried not to, and we start getting these amazing testimonials, I literally in my head was thinking, like, can you put anything on the market and you'll get amazing testimonials, right? The placebo effect is a real thing, and it applies to everything. It applies to the medications you take. It applies to the stem cells. Maybe not so good for you, but right? It applies to the it applies to everything you ever do. And so does the nocebo, which is if you believe it's not going to work, it won't work. Or if you believe it's going to do damage, it will do damage. And so part of me was like trying to assess that, and I'm a scientist, so I'm wired to have doubts and concerns, and so now I'm beyond that. But I think that's a fair question, and you know it's a tough question you didn't answer. Ask.
Chris, if people want to connect with you or find you, where's the best place for them to go?
What should our URL be for your audience? So we'll do myvitalc.com /
What is the name of the podcast? The best, or what would be?
Up to you. What's your audience you think
I would
resonate?
just # infinite income if
Infinite
that works.
income.
Yeah, because then you'll know it comes from here.
Yeah, myvitalc.com / infinite income.
Sure.
And let me tell you a couple things when you go to that page. There is a coupon code for $15 off if you're interested in trying it. It's on that page. You got to go to that page. So that's where you get the coupon code. That's how I track, because I love data.
I like that you do it. It's smart. That's exactly how I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love the phrase, marketing is math. And so many people don't think about that. There's a creative piece, but the creative piece only matters so that you can collect data to then make decisions on. Because that's the only thing that matters is the data and the decision. So marketing is math, right? So when you land there, so it's myvitalc.com / infinite income. When you land there, we've got 3 oils, right? We did the olive oil. There's an avocado oil. There's an MCT oil. People ask which one should they try. We always say the olive oil for 2 reasons. The first reason is because we're a science-based organization. Almost all the research is on the ESS60 molecule in olive oil. So that's one. The next is you actually get a higher concentration of the molecule in olive oil. You get about 0.8 milligrams per milliliter in olive oil, 0.6 in avocado oil, and then 0.3 in MCT oil. So that's that recommendation. We offer a 25% discount if you go on subscription. Even if you just want to try it once, go on subscription. Our customer service team has 1,000 5-star reviews on Google. They are not trained to talk you out of canceling your subscription. They are trained to help you, and they do a good job. Honestly, most people do just stay on subscription. And then I have a super cool, I'm very proud of, with the book. So the book is Live Longer and Better. It's available. I have a charity piece to it. It's available on Amazon for $20. You can come to the website. By the way, it won't be on the Infinite Income landing page. Grab that coupon code. Find the book and the structure. For $20, same price as on Amazon, you can buy the book, or for $10 extra, I'll actually autograph it for you. The full $10 goes to Operation Underground Railroad. Now,
that,
you may remember the movie The Sound of Freedom.
I'm very familiar with
If you're not familiar, it's an amazing movie about a horrible topic, which is child sex trafficking. Operation Underground is a great organization doing a great job trying to address that. Obviously, that should be off our planet immediately. So 100% of the signature fee goes to Operation Underground.
Love that. That's really awesome. Well, Chris, thanks for being on, and can't wait to see where you go.
Tanner, it was great to be here. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.